I'm happy to be here, and I apologize because I'm going to have to run because, interestingly enough, this afternoon the County Council will be voting on 2 new members of the Planning Board. And that's an important decision for the County Council to make, because had we had the right Planning Board a few years ago, this road wouldn't be where it is today. And so I would prefer to elect or choose Planning Board members that aren't going to make mistakes like this twice. Once is enough. I want to thank everybody for being here today. And I want to join the organizers of this event in calling for a moratorium on construction of the ICC until the health impact assessment is done. This is a road whose sole remaining reason for existence is that it was placed in a master plan 50 years ago. And ever-increasing massive evidence shows us that whatever rationale existed then doesn't exist today. We've had multiple traffic analysis that show the ICC won't solve our traffic problems and is not the best use of $3 billion if that's what you were trying to do. And I would remind people that it was Governor Glendening who pulled the plug on the ICC originally because the state highway analysis of what's the best way to spend $3 billion so they could do more benefit from Montgomery County spending it on a myriad of projects that the county badly needs and that I know as a council member we cannot possibly do, to spend it on those projects rather than to spend it on the ICC. We live at a time when we're keenly aware that a road project that does this much environmental destruction shouldn't be built. We're not new to the environmental issues today. Environmental issues have been, I think, brought front and center over any number of reasons, and for us to be ignoring environmental consequences, I think is truly tragic. We're at a moment in history when virtually everybody is acknowledging that we need to shift our priorities to mass transit. Yet we've made a budgetary decision that robs us of our ability to make that shift. The decision to fund the ICC and to tap not only our own state funds, but to tap future federal funds is going to make it extraordinarily difficult for the state and this county to make the shift toward mass transit. Added to that is the fact that the ICC ridership is sensitive to price. And with $4 to $5 gas and $7 tolls, the very likely outcome is reduced ridership on the ICC. Reduced ridership on the ICC means less toll revenue. Less toll revenue means they're going to have to rob other sources of transportation funds in the state to pay for the bonds. In other words, we're going to be less able rather than more able to do the things we need to do. We're also at a point in history where everybody knows we need to do something serious about climate change. I woke up this morning to a headline in Yahoo saying this is our last chance. What are we doing with our last chance? And why do we pretend in Montgomery County that we're so small that nothing we do matters? Everything we do matters, and this road is simply the wrong choice. So we're being asked to fund a road that defies traffic analysis, environmental science, climate science, and budgetary constraints. But if that weren't enough, we're also being asked not just to ignore, but to actually remain ignorant about what we know about health science. I'm a parent, a grandparent, and I'm a former school teacher. And I've read the scientific literature that says that children who spend large amounts of time in proximity to a major highway suffer severe health impacts, including impaired lung function. I find it hard to believe that we would insist on building this road without understanding what the impacts are going to be on the children at this school and the children in the communities that line the ICC route. The study that I read this winter based on Los Angeles indicated very, very severe impacts for people who live, work, and play in proximity to a major arterial. And the ICC is going to be a major arterial. And if I've read them, you know the people in the state of Maryland have read them, you know that the health department's read them, and basically we're being asked to pretend like none of this information exists. Before I left here today, I was talking to one of my colleagues who said, why bother? Look at the schools next to the Beltway. Look at the schools next to other roads in Montgomery County. As if mistakes that were made in the past are somehow the rationale for making mistakes in the future. Now, you could argue 20, 30 years ago when things were cited, there perhaps was no clear science that indicated this would lead to bad health impacts on children. But 30 years later, there's no doubt that it leads to bad health impacts. And if it leads to bad health impacts, and you know it leads to bad health health impacts. The argument that you did it before is no argument for why you should do it again. So I call on the governor and the state legislature to put a halt to this until a health assessment is done and we can understand fully what the impacts are going to be on the children. I would also add that they ought to do an economic analysis, because this thing is not going to pay for itself, and they really ought to do an honest traffic analysis and decide again whether this is the best way to spend the money.